Hello there. My name is Conrad Abbott Shin, student number 2006-38641. I am the Gilbert Asshole. So to start, I'd like to say a little bit about myself. I was a student at MUN from 2006 to 2012. I had a conversation with a few people in one of the new residence buildings that have been built in the last few years, and I came to this realization that some of the history of MUN in student life could have an interesting effect on student life on campus today, that knowledge of some of the traditions that have either died or have gone forgotten may actually, revitalize student life a little bit. So I decided to have a little fun and talk about those periods as best as I can remember. Maybe in the future, other alumni can talk about, fun little facts about the history of MUN, and we can make this a thing. However, I'm going to start things very simple. Why I'm referring to myself as the Gilbert Asshole. Well, I happen to live in Gilbert Court, although I did start in Cartier. There was a chant that we used to do, and it went as follows. We are the Gilbert Assholes, a rather motley crew. If you are not Gilbert, then who the fuck are you? And the chant was, at the time, chanted by everybody who was in Gilbert, and, it was fun. And that's why I'm calling myself the Gilbert Asshole. Anyways, we start off with two very interesting events that occurred at MUN. One is historically significant. Another one is a hidden gem that literally no one knows about except for me. So, we'll start with the big one that's widely documented. The MUN Drama Society and the story of Jody Rideout and the revival of the dead MUN Drama Club and MUN Improv. It was 2006, and I happened upon meeting a guy who was volunteering for first-year orientation. His name was Jody Rideout. After doing the orientation, and I thanked him for being my guide all day, he asked me if I liked drama and improv because he was trying to revive the Drama Society. I said, sure, why not? I'm more into improv than drama because I kind of like making up things as I go. It feels like I'm playing pretend like a kid. So he invited me to both, and I showed up to both meetings with a very specific emphasis that I legitimately just wanted to do improv, but I was willing to help out whatever I had for drama because the improv club was essentially an offshoot of the MUN Drama Club, meaning that you had an obligation to attend the drama meetings even if you weren't actually in a play. So, we all collaborated, we all made different, projects that really got a lot of praise and attention. What happened was there was a lot of buzz among the powers that be in student and MUNSU to give an award for Society of the Year to the MUN Drama Club in order to celebrate the successful revival of this long-dead club. And so I ended up being a part of the historic revival of the MUN Drama Club and all the success that came with it. And it was great. So that one is, like I said, it's easily well documented. But here's one that was not. During freshman orientation, a lot of local businesses decided to give out gift cards and certificates for free meals in order to advertise their dishes and hoping to attract students to their restaurants. However, the people responsible for printing these gift cards made a ridiculous mistake that no one noticed, except for a certain freshman. First year, freshman's American term, except for a certain first-year student who happened to leave orientation and noticed that some people had chosen, for whatever reason, not to take gift bags that they were allowed to take. They had like free school supplies, some care package stuff, and those mentioned gift cards. But the mistake, when I looked at one of the gift cards, I noticed they did not have an expiration date. And the kind of types of gift cards I was very familiar with, and they typically do. Then I looked at all of them. None of them had expiration dates. And there were leftover bags from the orientation. So I swiped them all and got 30 to 40 free meals at sit-down restaurants in downtown St. John's. Suffice to say, as a first-year student, I ate like a king. So I feel like that's a great way to conclude 2006 because this is kind of like a prologue. I mean, my memories were mostly residence. First year had major. Actually, you know what? No, there was actually one last first year thing. I feel like I'm so stupid to fail to forget it. The history of the Bruno Center. 2006 was a long time ago, but the story is still ongoing technically, and so this is not actually just history, it's also possibly present. Once upon a time, there was a building. You all know it as the Bruno Center. However, back in 2006, it was the Inco Innovation Center. It was a flashy new building with munnels that were, well, sky munnels that were brand new, beautiful, like pristine lockers, and a beautiful skyway that honestly made every other one look ugly in comparison at the time. I cannot stress the beauty of the architectural work. So the Inco Innovation Center was literally like the biggest, baddest, awesomest lecture room in all the university. And I mean, I'm sure that hasn't changed. Those seats are quite comfortable. But my political science prof, Michael Tomalini, did something that caused a great upheaval at the school. In Introduction to Political Science, he decided to invite a random woman to the front of the class. We didn't know who she wasn't a student, and he said, "Hello everyone, I'd like to introduce you to this woman. She's from Indonesia. She'd like to share what it means to work with INCO." She shared her story, and Temelini's supplement also spoke, helping her with slides and, of course, her limited English. But it was revealed that the way that INCO, this mining company, was mining in Indonesia was effectively destroying forests that were protecting villages from rock slides. They continually destroyed these forests and made deals with the government to laxen the environmental laws and subject many, many villages in Indonesia that were near these mines to raining wrath from mudslides unlike anything the country had ever seen before. And they didn't care. However, once word got out, students were outraged. Activism sparked. People demanded that INCO leave the university. And this went on for not just that year, for many after that. It was a 3 or 4 year process. And there was a problem. The students, despite all of their fighting, could not win for one unfortunate fundamental reason. INCO's money was funding way too many research grants. They simply could not honor the students' passion for moral principle without throwing away some of their programs in the process and destroying their livelihoods. So giving the students what they want would have unfortunately destroyed the students in the process. And so, unfortunately, they had to settle for the compromise of removing INCO from the sign of the door and naming it the Bruno Center. And if memory serves, Bruno, I think, is the member of a beloved student or faculty member that did something historically significant on campus. But those details are not relevant to the story of of the INCO Center, which, technically speaking, was a different building with a different name. Anyways, that is actually the end of where I want to say 2006. To me, those are the 3 most interesting historical events that happened. And man, was that INCO incident crazy. Like, it really caused a lot of upheaval. Oh boy. And there's still a stalemate. Because, it's not like that kind of historical information just goes completely forgotten with the activist communities at MUN. So I'm sure that every once in a while INCO gets a headache, and that one of these days they're going to figure out how to outfund INCO and get them out of our school. But in the meantime, enjoy the opportunities that this corrupt corporation is willing to offer you. Really aren't in a financial position to bargain. Anyways, with that being said, Uh, we move on to my first year in residence in 2007, my second year. Now, this was an interesting year for one very, well, actually two very significant reasons. The first was the way they revamped Burton's Pond student life concepts. The way that student life in residence worked is that Peyton College generally targeted first-year students, I think they still do, who basically get a buffet first year, and they do the games and activities and residence stuff. But Burton Pond wasn't really a part of res life back then. It was kind of considered like a quiet entity for serious older students who didn't want to do the juvenile activities of student life. But somehow, and for some unexplained reason, the idea of including Burton's Pond in student life came up. And so these students who were, cultures were suddenly completely turned upside down by the prospect of Burton's Pond residents actually participating in resident game events. And this is where, things get interesting. Because the second significant thing that happened was that somebody in Burton's Pond, whose name I forgot unfortunately, secured a deal with a Labatt alcohol sponsor. Student residents would have free alcohol. And admittedly, even as big as the quantities were, they were not enough to sustain all of residents with free beer for parties every week. However, there was enough to have some pretty decent parties, and it definitely helped alleviate the cost of alcohol in school. But I personally at the time did not drink and won 15 beers in a singing contest for residents. And I looked at the beers and I didn't know what to do. I could not refuse them because of not drinking and offend the Labatt rep. So I just decided to take them and I said, all right, well, you know what? People drink in residence. I'll just give beers to people who come over to my house and offer them. So a guy comes over and I offer him a beer and I say, totally free. I don't drink. And next thing you know, I've got 14 other people and 15 new friends. And I will tell you this, that despite the occurrence of this event, a pro tip to all university students, beer is the currency of residence. A single beer to the right person can change your life forever. Bank on it. Anyways, moving on, the development of the Labatt sponsorship and the inclusion of Burton's Pond led to suddenly Burton's Pond people getting student life. And because of the general tradition of being second, third, and fourth year students, were basically interested in kind of doing more, I guess you could say, mature and sophisticated student life events that the Peyton College people do. And one of such example was a very incredibly lucrative deal with the Keg, which was a trendy new steak restaurant at the time, which students, of course, would naturally actively avoid. Who goes to a gourmet steakhouse when you're a student? I'm sorry, even wealthy students just don't bother because it's so ridiculous to spend that much when you are paying, a significant amount of money just to stay in housing and your courses. So, anyways. But somehow the executives of the Burton's Pond residence had successfully brokered a deal for $40 dip steak, chicken, or salmon dinners ordered in advance with a cheesecake for dessert. And, of course, vegetarian option, but I don't really remember what it was. Anyways, so we all get dressed up and we all go out to this party and it was amazing. Gourmet food, people talking about their business aspirations and how they can't wait for the days that this is going to be the rest of their lives. It was fantastic, and it was an unforgettable moment for every single student in Burton's Pond. But that's a bit of a tangent, because the history of the student life is not, and the activities is not where things get interesting. This is where I drop the history of one of the most reviled and simultaneously confusing policies in university residence: the beer bottle rule. A lot of students, of course, would prefer the taste of beer in glass. This is universally true for most drinkers. Cans are always considered inferior to beer. So naturally, university students and living residents aren't exactly thrilled at the fact that they have to drink their beers from cans. However, the history of why the university decided this is actually very reasonable and quite understandable once you hear the whole story. And so I am going to tell the events that led up to the enforcement of the no beer bottles in residence rule. And it goes as follows. So, initially, with all the Labatt-free beer, obviously empty beer bottles were piling up, and the rate of disposing them was a little more complicated when you're trying to juggle, basically throwing away free beers that are supplementing everybody's additional trash. So sometimes beer bottles would pile up in one of the rooms, so we could just put them out later. Unfortunately for us, the decision to do that led to a student getting so drunk that he decided it would be a good idea to just randomly throw beer bottles at a bare wall. And it was in one of those bigger rooms on the side, so if I'm not mistaken, that would make it a 111, and I believe it was Gilbert. However, could have been Cabot or Cartier. I mean, considering at the time Cabot was unofficially the asshole house that everyone hated, it would seem reasonable to say Cabot, but I'm not going to slander the reputation of a resident without, being confused, so I'm just going to simply leave that at speculation. However, the one thing that is, regardless of which 111 that it was, the main side room, the big one, the thing that made this infinitely more disturbing than people even realize is not just the fact that he was throwing beer bottles at the wall, but how hard, under normal circumstances, the physics class would dictate that when you throw a beer bottle at the wall, there's supposed to be, substantial amounts of glass. However, a bizarre development is that more glass got embedded into the wall than actually could have been expected. The ricochet was minimal compared to what it should have been, and somehow the guy had succeeded in creating this ridiculous mosaic of beer bottle fragments that looked like a work of abstract art, all while being drunk. And I actually firsthand witnessed the creation of this masterpiece. And it was really, really crazy. Suffice to say, it was a no-brainer for admin. The student would pay for the cost to clean the destruction that he had caused. But however, the bizarreness of the capacity of glass to somehow penetrate the concrete on the side of a wall was very bizarre. And it definitely got a student kicked out of school, no questions, and the residents. But here's the thing. It wasn't the reason why the beer bottle rule was introduced. I mean, yes, it contributed to it, but this is actually the straw that broke the camel's back. So things go back to normal in residence, but a few weeks later, there's a random kid in Peyton College who was walking down the hall, beer in hand, deciding to step outside. But, unbeknownst to him, there was a student who had accidentally dropped a beer bottle. It got shattered on the floor. The student, of course, cleaned up the pieces and got the foul. Unfortunately, because everyone's drunk, there was negligence on the cleaning of the glass, and there was a significant piece left in the hallway. The student stepped on the glass, not noticing or perceiving it, because the pain of being cut by glass is masked by alcohol. He put on socks and shoes to step outside and have more drinks than the rest of his buddies, but then something crazy happened. Within a few hours, he had died of bleeding because he did not realize that he was bleeding through his shoe. This incident triggered the no beer bottle rule, because while the university administration obviously did not preach vandalism of property, I'm pretty sure someone being killed by a beer bottle this way didn't exactly, provide much ground for students to stand on at the time. And while I obviously sympathize with beer lovers for never being able to have beer bottles in residence, I mean, I think we can all safely agree that we do not want recreations of the death of a Peyton College student on our hands again. That would be awkward. With that being said, I do think it would be a fun idea for a student project to memorialize the most infamous act in residence history by creating a mural of, well, shattered beer glass. So, there's my final thoughts for this video. I feel like 20 minutes is enough of little Munn residence history, but we will I'll just send you off with, we are the Gilbert assholes, a rather motley crew. If you are not a Gilbert, then who the fuck are you?